What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I am here on the shores of Lake Eufaula here in Alabama, getting ready for the fourth stop on the MLF Pro Circuit here at Eufaula. And because we're at Eufaula, and this is a really good kind of dirty water fishery, especially with as much rain as we've got, a chatterbait is going to definitely play a role in some form or fashion this week. I'm going to be throwing a chatterbait. And so since it's kind of a good chatterbait fishery, I wanted to go over and share with you my 3 chatterbait trailers that I use for pretty much all the different conditions that I face across the country. And I've narrowed it down to 3. Occasionally I might mix in a different trailer just to match a certain type of bait fish. But for the most part, these are the 3 that I really lean on hard. And first off, let's talk about why we use a soft plastic trailer on a chatterbait. So I'm going to put one of these on this chatterbait real quick. So the reason why we tend to use a trailer on a chatterbait, just like you would use a trailer on a jig, is twofold in my opinion. Number one, it allows you to mix and match to create the perfect profile and also the perfect color combination to imitate whatever type of bait fish is predominantly being eaten by the fish. And so whatever the fish are keying in on, a trailer really allows you to match it very closely. And another thing that a trailer will help do with a chatterbait is it allows the chatterbait to kind of track a little bit better, a little bit straighter. If I took off this trailer and fished this jackhammer chatterbait all by itself, it would have such an erratic action, it would have a hard time kind of staying tuned or running true. But with a trailer on it, and really different trailers will act a little bit differently on a chatterbait and make that chatterbait act differently, but it really allows the chatterbait overall to run better. So those are the 2 things. It allows you to match the hatch a little bit better, and it allows the bait to just kind of have a better overall action. So that's the reason why we use trailers on our chatterbaits. I don't ever throw a chatterbait without a trailer, and so I think it's really important. One thing I need to mention is first off, the majority of the chatterbaits that we're going to be talking about and relating to these trailers are the type of chatterbait that have a skirt on them, like the jackhammer, the original chatterbait, the Project Z, any of those chatterbaits in the Z-Man line that have a skirt on them. That's the type that we're talking about that I'm going to be using with these 3 different trailers I'm going to get into. There's other chatterbaits out there that I'm going to, my trailer choices are going to be a little bit different, like the chatterbait Willow Vibe. That's a real finesse chatterbait. I'm going to be using smaller trailers like the Streaks 3.75, the Thin Swims, and just overall smaller trailers on something like that. But for the purpose of this video and the 3 different trailers that we're talking about here, we're just talking about your traditional chatterbait with a skirt. So just wanted to throw that out there. Another thing I want to throw out there is the fact that you're going to see real quick that all 3 of these baits are Z-Man Elaztech baits, and that's not just because I work with Z-Man. I'm going to tell you right now, the Elaztech line, the Elaztech material, is by far a superior option for a trailer, in my opinion, for a chatterbait or a swim jig or even just a traditional jig. And the reason for that, and this is just my opinion obviously, but there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, Elaztech is extremely durable. So you know, even though I'm doing kind of the stretchy test right now, it doesn't really show you how durable this bait really is. But Elaztech is super durable. You can just put it on your chatterbait, and sometimes I'll add a little bit of super glue, and that bait will stay on there all day through dozens of catches. And I've gone you know, several times with one bait and catching close to 100 fish, you know, give or take. And so just overall, the durability factor is a big deal for me because it allows me to fish a bait without having to constantly go into you know, the storage container to go get another trailer and change that out constantly. Just allows me to be more efficient. The second thing that I really love about Elaztech as far as a trailer option is the fact that it's so soft and supple. It really does have a lot of action. Even if it's a bait that doesn't have a lot of action, like this razor shads, by itself, on the back of a chatterbait, it really does have a lot of action because it's just a lot softer material than a traditional soft plastic. So those are the two main reasons why I love using Elaztech for my chatterbait trailers and my jig trailers and swim jig trailers. So just throwing that out there. But let's dive right into the three different choices that I have that I use for all situations with a traditional chatterbait. And the first one is actually the trailer that I started out using with a chatterbait. Actually, that's not necessarily true. When I first started fishing a chatterbait back in the day, when it was the original chatterbait, they came with those little two-tailed, I don't even know what to call them, but they're like these two-tailed little trailers, the little straight tails on them, and they came with that, and so I fished that primarily. But once they came out with this bait right here, this is the 4-inch Diezel minnows from Z-Man. This is the bait that I started using pretty much exclusively on my chatterbaits until I started, you know, diving into some of the other designs for certain situations. But overall, the Diezel minnows is a boot style tail, so it has that little kicking action. It's a little swim bait, and I love the Diezel minnows because it's the perfect size. I don't have to trim this thing down to make it fit the chatterbait just right. It just looks like it's made for the back of a chatterbait. So I'll string that on there and don't have to do anything to it. So that's one thing I love. And one thing I will mention about how this bait makes the chatterbait act, you know, a chatterbait like the jackhammer does have an inherent, you know, kind of hunting action, erratic action to it. And the Diezel minnows, because it has this boot style tail that really creates a lot of drag, it tends to kind of hamper and dampen that overall hunting action just a little bit. So but by itself, it's got a lot of action too. So it's my favorite choice if I'm trying to imitate shad and just trying to cover water with a straight retrieve. And what I mean by that is a straight retrieve is casting it out there, reeling it back in, just a steady retrieve, or just kind of steadily retrieving it and then giving it a little bit of action on the way, or just kind of a stop and go retrieve where you're retrieving, you stop, and then you restart back up. That's the type of retrieve I'm going to be using with the Diezel minnows, and that's where it excels. On the other hand, one thing that I started doing about 2 years ago, I remember it perfectly because I was at Sam Rayburn. I was throwing my traditional Diezel minnows trailer on a chatterbait, and I started realizing, you know, I really wanted to work it, kind of yo-yo it through some of those drains that you hear about on Sam Rayburn. And so one thing I noticed is with the Diezel minnows, because of that boot style tail, when I paused it, it just kind of, the boot style tail created kind of like a parachute action to it. So it kind of like slowed the fall and made it fall straight down. But I wanted more of a glide on the pause. So when it was falling, I wanted it to kind of glide horizontally. So I dug in my box and I came out with this. At the time, it was fairly new, but the razor shads from Z-Man, it's quite a bit different than the Diezel minnows. It doesn't have a boot tail on it, so it doesn't have any kicking action by itself, but it's got these 3 little joints, and because it's Elaztech, it's really soft. So it does have a lot of action. It has a real natural swimming action, but it's a lot more subtle. And what this trailer allowed me to do in that situation where I wanted to yo-yo it and have that kind of horizontal glide to it, it's a subtle glide. It's not gonna like go like this, but it's gonna have a much more gliding action than the Diezel minnows does. But what it allowed me to do is have that glide action that I really wanted. And another thing that I ended up learning about the razor shads is because it doesn't have that drag like the Diezel minnows has. It allows that chatterbait to have a little bit more of a hunting action. So if that chatterbait traditionally has a hunting action with the Diezel minnows, it's going to have a little bit more with the razor shads. So overall, if I'm trying to imitate shad and I'm fishing areas where I'm yo-yoing the chatterbait and trying to get a nice glide action out of it, and I also want a little bit more of a erratic action, maybe in clearer water, that's when I'm going to be using the razor shads. So that's been a really, really good bait for me, especially early season when the water's a little bit colder. That's primarily where I'm going to be yo-yoing a chatterbait anyways. Finally, the last trailer that I've added to my arsenal is one that I started using just recently, and it's because it's a brand new bait. This right here is a brand new Z-Man goat. Comes in 3 different sizes, but I primarily just use 2 sizes, the traditional goat and the billy goat, which is a little bit bigger. But the goat is kind of like a mix between a creature bait and a grub. It's got these 2 little kicking tails on them, create a ton of action, ton of swimming action, and really this is my choice for when I'm fishing in areas where the fish are keying in on either crawfish or bluegill. It's got a little bit wider of a profile, so when I put this bait on there, on that chatterbait, it creates a wider profile presentation that looks like a bluegill or a crawfish. So if I'm faced with those situations where I want to imitate those type of forage species, that's when I'm going to be using the goat, and it just looks really good on the back of a chatterbait, and especially on the back of a swim jig. This is probably my favorite swim jig trailer nowadays. But yeah, those are overall my 3 different choices that I use on the back of chatterbaits as my trailers. I'm learning something new every year, obviously, and as Z-Man comes out with new Elaztech baits, I'll experiment with them, but really, for the majority of the time, these are the 3 that I'm going to be leaning on pretty hard. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure you kind of keep up with all the progress this week here at Lake Eufaula. We've got, of course, all the live coverage. It's going to start next Thursday if you're watching this before the event. It's all going to be on majorleaguefishing.com. And yeah, it's going to be a great time, and we're going to definitely be throwing a chatterbait at some point. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. I'm going to see you out on the water. Take care.
For all your fishing tackle needs, check out 44tackle.com.